There was nobody else in the cafe. Bina looked around. It was lunchtime, crunch time. The weather was fine. The church bells had chimed. Her clothes were still hanging on the line. As she looked out the window, she saw not 1, 2, 3, but 4. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left. A pin in their jacket, a gun in their hand. This wasn't an invasion, it was theft. As she looked out the window in awe, behind the 4 there were more. No, there was nobody else in the cafe. Bina looked around. He just said, "Hi. Look, guys, I learned how to tie a tie." They shot him to the ground. He died without a sound. The child, who was not yet bound.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome. Thank you all for coming. You've probably seen the notification. We are recording this. We will start with a story.
Dear S, I never liked the cold, and the first time we met, I didn't like you. You were the unknown, the uncertain, and I didn't know how to stay afloat whenever you were around. But slowly, I kept coming back. Seasons changed, something shifted, and then I was hooked like the fairy lights on my big blank wall. At first out of place, a strange sight until they weren't. Over time, they just fit. Some warmth in the cold and a cool breeze in the heat. You've been with me since I was 4, and I don't remember when we started to just fit. You're my familiar embrace when the seasons change. I don't mind the cold these days, but I really like you. Love always, L.
We would like to give a big thank you to Lenise for writing that letter. Some of you may have seen it already if you've been able to see some of the stories. Lenise is actually here, but I think she's a little bit busy, so she's hopefully going to be joining in a couple of seconds. But we can't take credit for her for her wonderful story. So hopefully you guys have been able to see the incredible stories that we've received this weekend. We've been blown away by the talent, by everyone's willingness to contribute, and not only the willingness but the skill of the contributions as well. And as we've read more and more of them and tried to keep up with them and put them onto the group, we decided that we wanted to pick some stories to I guess read out loud and to show to you guys tonight. However, when we were trying to work out which ones to pick, we couldn't. So we decided to do it randomly and just do a bit of put your hand in the pot and pick out a number. So we have some stories that we want to read tonight, but also, hello Lenise, by the way. I don't know if you were here when Cyan read your story.
No, I wasn't. I'm glad I wasn't. I don't like to hear it.
It was wonderful. I could see the appreciative nods from everybody in the room. So
Thanks, Ian.
So we will be we will be reading some of those stories tonight. But what we would also like, I know a few of you guys have submitted stories, and there's no pressure to do this. But if you feel like it, we would also love it if maybe you could join in and read a story of your own, something that you've submitted. We're not going to name any names or anything live on camera, so there's no pressure. But if you do feel like it when we're reading the next story, then come and say hello and nominate yourselves to do that. How's everyone going tonight? Anyway, before we just move on.
Good.
Good.
Very good.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you as well. I think we've been we had a similar conversation on the last chat with a few people. We've been communicating for a long time on LinkedIn, but never actually met in person. So it's a pleasure.
Yeah, it is.
And so a few of you guys, I think I know mostly everybody else. I think Cyan, you know the one person I don't know in the room.
Yes, Alistair. It's been 10 years, I think, since we've seen each other.
Long time, my goodness. It was so nice. I have to say, I was slightly confused what happened last week about Puck, and then and then this morning when your post came up, everything clicked together, and it was just such a joy to start my Monday morning with a little bit of raising at my bar. So thank you for that. Hey, listen, time flies, doesn't it?
It does indeed. Yeah. So maybe I'll read that story later on if people haven't seen it yet today.
Can I just say, guys, I'm reading this book, What Poetry Brings to Business, by Claire Morgan. It's only available secondhand, but she is the head of entrepreneurial writing or creative writing at Oxford. I've met her a few times, and in my engineering world and business world, poetry and stories are just so much part of what makes us and companies better, human and really, as they say, empathetic and reaching out to everyone.
Absolutely.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, that absolutely goes with what we try and do in Puck Creations. We're big believers in storytelling and using poetry to connect with your audience. I think Stefano's gotten the majority of his clients through storytelling and through writing poetry, which people always think is a really strange thing to do, but it really resonates with people. And people say, yeah, this is the kind of person I want working in my business.
Oh, listen, exactly. And sometime we'll chat about this book. Just not bore you with books. This is the last one.
You've got a lot behind you.
we maybe can't go through the whole bookshelf, but this one's good. This
is the second of 130.
26 treasures. I had lunch. A very nice girl invited me for lunch, and I can't resist. She said, "There's no such thing as a free lunch." She said, "Alistair, have you heard of the 62 Club?" I said, "Never." She said, "It is Poet Laureate is a member, and they have invited 26 people to write a poem of 62 words. The flip of 26, and this Gillian had been asked to find 26 poets in Ireland to write a poem of 62 words exactly. So I'm having lunch, and we're tucking into rhubarb parfait, and she said, "Would you like to be one of the 26 in Ireland?" And I said, "Whoa, I'm not what you would call a professional poet." She said, "Yeah, I can only find 25, and you're the only one." So I've been published, and it was such a hoot. But it really was. It puts pressure on you to write into these 62 words. And there are many other forms of poetry, but by gum, it's just a wonderful way of crafting language.
If you would like a little bit more pressure on you, Alistair, after you've told that story, you've now opened yourself up for me to ask you, maybe a little bit later on in proceedings, to read that poem.
I will read it. Yeah, sure. Unless we're overwhelmed by really good literary work, as I'm sure we will.
Well, can I just ask, what was the name of the book?
The book is called, 26 Treasures.
Okay, thanks.
And it was published in 2013. But I have to say, again, to my utter amazement, It was voted Book of the Year for the Literature Award by the British Book Design and Production Awards. Obviously, they skimmed over page 65.
We know to look out for page 65.
All
don't
of
we?
that. I mean, hey, listen, it's nice. That's why it's so wonderful to be involved in this sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Thinking differently, just because it's so good for us.
Yeah. So with that, shall we have another story?
I
Stefan?
think we should. I think we should. And we'll put the thank you out before we read this story this time. So this one, Clive wasn't able to join us tonight, but Clive Bartlett wrote this story and he posted it this morning. 1990, London. Joining the crowd at Whitehall, something felt different. The mood had changed. The drums, whistles, the good-natured way banter. It all gone. Ahead of me, a heavy police presence moved in. The crowd scatters. And the banner unfolds. It reads, "Community, charge!" So, they do. As do the police. For a photography student with a few shots left, this is gold. Hold this! A man behind me climbs some scaffolding. Quick, give it me. A little idea of what's going on, I hand it back. Seconds later, what I was holding is launched towards a line of police. From the press, comes another voice. Thinking of my feet. Watford College Express. Cool, get this. Together, with 3 others, he rams a bench into a police horse. Did you get it? Want us to do it again? No, I didn't. And no, I don't. Amongst the chaos, it was surprisingly easy to get close to the action. But lowering my camera and taking it all in, this wasn't for me. This was no longer about the poll tax. It was about mindless destruction. And for some, grabbing 15 minutes of fame in the media. Total BS. You photographers are fueling this violence, shouts a policeman. There was much more to it than that. But in part, he had a point. Thank you again, Clive.
Very good.
Yeah,
Well
thank
done.
you.
What we would like to do between some of these stories is maybe just have a little chat about them and see what you guys take away from them and what you. I don't know if any of you guys got to read the story earlier, or if it's just the version that I gave you now. But was there anything you took from it that's really resonated, or this is open to everyone?
Well, I think the mark of a good story always, Stefano, is whether the audience can picture what's going on in their minds. And you know, I could see what you were talking about, and even better, it's a little bit like when you imagine that you're there. You know, so you're almost reliving the experience that the narrator or the storyteller is telling. So you know, I was able to do that there, so that was beautiful.
Fantastic. I'm very much with you on that. Does anybody else have any similar ideas or anything different they'd like to add?
I like the way you read it, and I think when I read things, I try and stop myself reading too quickly. Like you really left a lot of pauses, and there was a lot of difference in the way that you stressed parts of it. And it was like, it was unhurried, which was kind of a good contrast with what it was actually about.
Thank you. But that wasn't what I was expecting from you to be about me.
I know, but just, I mean, that was something that but then that made it more, I mean, I could see it, which is a no down to the writing.
Yeah, I think part of the reason I wanted to read it like that was because I felt there were certain moments when I read it this morning. I think it was this morning. I've read so many stories over the weekend, but I think it was this morning that I read it. I had to read it again a second time because the first time I did exactly what you said there, Gary. I read it quickly and I kind of skimmed it and was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And as I got to the part where they're ramming a bench into a police horse, that stopped me in my tracks, and I thought, oh, hang on a minute, there's more to this story than I'd realized. And so I read the end quickly so that I could get back to the beginning, and then reread it at a pace that I thought I could actually absorb and take in every moment, and as you say, picture myself at the scene where Clive was. And I think, as you've both mentioned, I think that's something that happens with great stories when you can be part of the scene, where you can be one with the person who's written the story. You know they've done something well. I have to say, Gary, your story earlier on today, and to be fair, Karima and Denise, with all of your stories, we definitely get a feeling, and you set the scene, you picture it for us, and we can feel like we're part of it. Andrew, the way he narrates, you're automatically absorbed to every word, and you turn everything else off. So we can. I think this is, again, it's what makes storytelling so powerful, and it's one of the reasons that I personally love it so much.
Can I explain one thing that I learned a little while ago, Stefan? It might interest the others. I'm not a huge football fan, but there was a guy called James Alexander Gordon who for 20 odd years used to read the football results out on the BBC on Grandstand on a Saturday afternoon. And Alistair's nodding, so maybe you've heard him, Alistair. He's
taken me back a long way.
He's no longer with us, sadly, but he had a very particular way of reading them out. So he would say something like Manchester United 4, Tottenham Hotspur, and then you knew it would be 0 or 1 because the intonation of his voice, it dipped, and you kind of knew what the score was going to be.
Oh.
And he was interviewed a while later about how, his particular style of speaking was so unusual, and how did you come across it? They asked him. And he said, well, all I do is I imagine what it would feel like to be on the winning side or the losing side when I read their score out.
That's great.
So I bring that up because you're injecting feeling by imagining what it would be like to be, the recipient of violence, or maybe to be agitated to the point where you want to protest about something. And the feeling then is connected with the message. And a lot of the people I work with don't feel what they're saying. They deliver lines, mostly in the business world is where I work, but there's no feeling. They're not attached to any emotion that they feel for what they're saying.
I agree with that. We see that quite a lot as well. And I think something that makes a big difference to we don't want to talk too much in depth about business today, but something that we talk about with our clients quite a lot when we're working on their brands is when they have something which they, as you say, which they truly believe in, when they have something that truly is guiding them to want to be who they are as a business, to want every single person is motivated in the business because they've got a goal, there's something they want to achieve. You can tell instantly the difference when they are reading lines to when they are saying something that isn't just a note on a notepad. It is actually something that comes from the soul. And yes, they might have the notes to guide them because they want to make sure they've got it right, but they believe in that thing. And I think that's if you can get the combination of being able to tell a story well and truly believing in what you're aiming for, that's a really, really powerful way to be able to bring clients to you and to be able to bring more businesses to you. So completely with you on that. And one other point, sorry, I won't go on too much, but one other point that I took from what you just said there, Andrew, is I read that story the way that I felt that story. And what I love is that if somebody else had narrated that story, they would have read it in a completely different way. And we would have then all probably heard it in a completely different way too, and potentially taken something completely different from it. So I love the written word, and I love to read, and I love to use our imagination, but I also think it's so powerful to see movies and to see people on stage reading and to see poetry being read, because it completely changes it. It changes it so that you're getting into the mind of the reader as well as the writer. And I really love that.
And I comment on that? Absolutely. Because at one point I wasn't sure where I was in that story. And you talk about the reader and the writer, the speaker and the audience, the person receiving it. Because in the crowd, down by Westminster, down by Parliament, you've got the police who'd have one point of view, the people climbing the statues, if you like, throwing the park benches, the cameramen who are there for an entirely different reason. Mm-hmm. And dare I say it, there may be the few casual observers who are caught by accident, walked around the corner, and therefore completely other reasons. They're either watching or working out how they're going to escape and get away from this scene. So there's quite a lot going on in there. And
yes,
you know, and everyone has a different point of view. So how you tell your story in business, you have to tune it. Try to tune it to the audience.
Yes, completely agree.
And I think one of the things that's changed in recent times is that, you know, with the recent attack on the Capitol building on the 6th of January in Washington, D.C., you know, historically, you would see it as an audience from the perspective of behind the crowds, because the media would probably not be inside. But now, of course, with mobile phones and social media, we get a different point of view. We get the point of view of maybe people who were being attacked. Mm-hmm. Whereas before, we'd rely on the media perspective of where they happen to have their cameras positioned.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Again, as both of you have said and referenced, it makes a huge difference to the audience in terms of what you're seeing, and then in terms of the Capitol, there'll be people who have their agendas of what they want you to see, and in terms of businesses, we all have our agendas of what we want our potential clients to see too. So we maybe give them a window into the story we want them to see. We don't necessarily tell them the story the way that they might potentially hear it from somebody else, and that has a big again, I won't go into this in too much because we're here just to read nice stories today. But that we talk about brand and reputation quite a lot, and the differences between brand and reputation. And the brand are the actions that you take and the way that you communicate with people. But your reputation, you can't fully control, because that's the way that everybody else is thinking about you. But what you can do with your brand is give some kind of essence of what you want people to think about you and hope that that resonates. But there's a lot more to that in terms of connection and making sure that you're clear and consistent with your message, etc. However, I apologize because I'm going to stop that bit of the conversation a little bit short, because I know a lot of us come from LinkedIn, but this isn't really a business conversation. It's more of a just, you know, getting into the depth of stories today. So we'll maybe go on and tell another story if that's okay with everybody.
Cool.
Oh, sorry. No, Gary, say what you were going to say.
Oh, I just said, cool, good, yes.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
I didn't hear you. I thought you were about to say something, and then I got really rude for cutting you off.
No.
Well, would anybody like to share one of their stories?
Of course they would.
In that case, who's first?
Well, I don't mind, because you've asked me, Stefano, so I don't mind. Did you want the Starbucks one or the miscommunication one?
Personally, it's all very subjective, but I very much like the miscommunication one.
Okay. So I don't know how you all feel about the going to physical networking events, because I used to like doing that, but some people prefer virtual networking now and not actually physically meeting people. But I miss those days. And a few years ago, I went to a networking event on a Friday evening, which is a very odd time to go. It was in Revolution Bar, which is in Cheshire, in northwest England, near where I live. And it was really noisy in this place because all the noise from the restaurant was coming from downstairs, upstairs to the room where we were located. So you had a great vibe, but it was hard to hear people, what they were saying. So a guy comes up to me and he asks that classic question that you get asked at those sorts of occasions: what do you do? And I don't like to say anything ordinary. So I said to him, well, I tell stories. And you kind of hope that the audience will have an equal enthusiasm for what you do for a living, that they'll show a flicker of emotion. But I found myself looking at Alan Sugar in the boardroom, looking bored, looking completely disinterested and unimpressed with what I just said. So I kind of assumed, well, it's not his thing. The conversation moved elsewhere. And then a couple of minutes later, a friend of his came over and he introduced me to his friend. And he said, this is Andrew, he sells storage. I had to do a double take. I said, pardon. So it was a moment of miscommunication, because clearly he hadn't heard what I thought I'd said. And we had a huge giggle at that point and really bonded as a result of the miscommunication. But doesn't it remind you how difficult communication is sometimes, when what you think you've said is not what's received? And although I kind of blame the noise for it, then I think you always have to remind yourself that it's not always their fault for not listening properly. And I don't know, Alistair, you might know, being a learned gentleman, so I'm sure you are, whether it was Oscar Wilde that said this. I think he said something like, my speech was a great success, but the audience was a failure.
Well, it was possibly him or someone that, but you're absolutely right. We communicate. Look, I've been married a very long time. We could talk about how when two people who know each other so well communicate, but no matter, we think we've told the other what, and we think that has been received, but it has been put through filters for whatever reason.
Yeah. And
for, I've got this new expression called PLUs. When PLUs, people like us, who just want to get involved in reading and writing and understanding communication and communicating with an idea, the accuracy, it is so darned difficult. And we have listened to people giving lectures and we were bored to death. We've listened to people going blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to say Price Waterhouse and KPMG, their traditional stuff. It's just a pile of view foils from 1954. So authenticity and compact sentences are difficult.
Absolutely.
And that's by the way, sorry, I was going to say that was brilliant though, Andrew. Thank you very much for reciting it. The check I'm going to have before I put this online, after you've read that story, is how much miscommunication there has been within this Zoom call. Because when you listen to things back, you might work out that we weren't having a conversation with each other at all. We all had a lovely conversation with ourselves, but
if you're putting this on Facebook, could you just cut out what I said about PwC and KPMG?
Sorry, you were warned.
They're one of my clients, Alistair. I assume you were referring to the before rather than the after.
As they say, some of my best friends work for them.
Oh, that's brilliant. Would you like to read yours?
Yeah, so I think it might be a good time. I'll read my story of today. And maybe Alistair, you can help me with a small piece of this.
Okay.
Gosh,
Take
it's
it
a double
away.
act.
I think he's going to come in at the
I'm
right
not
time.
sure what he's going to get, but okay. Oh, he's prepared.
Oh, that
Excellent.
is brilliant.
Okay. It's called The Perfect Cup of Tea. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't have any slides. He just started telling us about how to make the perfect cup of tea. As I recall, it went something like this. Maybe Alistair, you can give us the recipe for a perfect cup of tea.
Well, you see, now this is like the two Ronnies. This is like being on Newsnight. What do you think? Because when we tell a story, a cup of tea in the morning in our house is boil the kettle, tea bag, spoon, fire it in, count to 7, and that's this. Fire tea bag out. But what you don't know is that I've one of the largest collections of teacups in Ireland. That you'd be pleased to know they're not in this room, so I can't get them. And so it's this, it's a bit like thinking, reflective, taking time. Will I have Earl Grey? Will I have Lapsang Souchong or Yan Krasnaya? Or will I have a chai halfway up Annapurna? But it's sitting in your perfect chair with your favorite book, quotes of Oscar Wilde. It has sat for 3 minutes 10 seconds, according to Suki Tea in Belfast, in an enamel pot. And as they say, like Robert Frost, that has made all the difference. Over to you.
Thank you. Now, as an Irish person, I live up to the stereotype of being a big fan of tea. However, at that precise moment, as I looked at the bewildered faces of my classmates, these were the thoughts going through my head. What has this got to do with engineering, and how will it help me pass the exam? I knew that the business module in final year was going to be a bit different from the normal rigors of thermodynamics and fluid mechanics, but the perfect cup of tea was not what I was expecting. Where was the step-by-step instruction on how to write a business plan? Well, Alistair continued and introduced our first assignment. To make people feel something, we had to make a 1-minute video, and it had to make people feel something. Happy, sad, inspired, angry, whatever we wanted to do. No rules. We could even hand in a blank CD if we wanted to, though you likely wouldn't get a very high mark. He shared the best of the entries from the previous year's students, and it seemed like we had a lot to live up to. The videos were incredibly creative, and well, yes, they made us feel something. We left the lecture still a little bit bemused, but intrigued and energized. It felt like the beginning of something. Over the next weeks and months, this lecture would become the highlight of our week. As we heard stories about what made the perfect pencil or the fastest rowing team, we were inspired to push ourselves beyond what the technical specifications told us to design. We started thinking about who we were designing for. How could we provide them with an exceptional customer experience? How could we be exceptional? We started to get out into the field to talk to real people about what their problems were. I came back to university driven to create something that made their lives better. Why? Because we knew it could be done. We'd heard the stories of the people who'd done it before. Now, I spent 4 years at university sitting in lectures. I remember almost none of them. Of course, I retained the knowledge of and the ability to apply the formulas, but the actual lectures, not really. The only ones that taught me through the story are the ones I remember a decade later. Now, it's funny how life comes full circle, because I haven't really remembered that for about a decade. But at the end of last year, I was asked to make a video for my team to kind of make us proud of the great work we'd done over a difficult year when we were all working remotely. And I was reminded of this assignment at university, the first time I was asked to make a video that made people feel something. In my role at Puck Creations, my job is to make people think, feel, and take action. And in my job at Philips as an engineer, I have to create a world-class patient experience in healthcare. In both of those roles, I keep reminding myself, what's the story here that we'll remember in 10 years' time?
Wow.
I feel like we have to hand this over to you, Alistair.
Well, I think I missed that word patient this morning, because making, listen, a cup of tea is such a simple thing, and a Faber-Castell pencil is such a simple thing, and yet Faber-Castell turn over 750 million euros a year in pencils, and yet just to create the perfect pencil. But the patient experience, isn't that so much more these days? And it's part of it's one of the engineering things I do is the patient experience. So I had a busy weekend, and I woke up this morning and went and made my coffee and opened up that poem story, and it lifted me hugely. So thank you for today, and to hear it again. I mean, you're right, to make impact, to leave something latent, or to be used when it's necessary, is what is a wonderful thing that storytellers do. And I've just said, stories take us somewhere. Mm-hmm. I love reading because stories take me away from this to somewhere else for half an hour.
On that wonderful note, I would like to maybe move on to another story that I think will also take us somewhere. The first challenge I'm going to come to is making sure I pronounce this lady's name right. But I'll give it a go. I believe it is Julia Farkas. If she is listening, she can, or she, if she sees this later on, then she can tell me I'm wrong, I'm sure. But she wrote a magnificent story, and I'm going to read it to you now. There is a house I walk by from time to time. It's in the neighborhood I grew up in. It has been fascinating to me ever since I was a child. There is something about the way it stands tall behind the white fence and the massive gate. It's an old one-story Greek revival style house with columns and huge windows. The ground floor opens with a terrace guarded by beautifully crafted columns that lead to the front yard. The columns reach all the way to the first floor, where they carefully shield a generous exterior balcony and the facade with high windows. I walked by it again last night. Without even realizing it, I approached the massive gate and found myself on the outside looking in. Everything seemed perfect and undisturbed. The heavy walls, the lace sculpted on the columns, and the yard with flawlessly cut decorative trees. I saw warm light coming from the large window downstairs, like a beacon in the dead of night. As I caught a glimpse of the inside, my heart started to race. I saw a man in his 30s sitting behind a huge mahogany desk. He was writing something. He had a whiskey glass resting patiently in front of him. From time to time, he was interrupting his writing to take short sips from his glass while looking out the window. At one point, as he was gazing out the window, a shadow fell upon his face. That's when I saw it. A mixture of anger, sadness, and worry. I was mesmerized by the scene, and all sorts of emotions rushed through my mind at that point. As he slowly took another sip from the glass, Our eyes met for a brief time. He didn't seem to mind me looking at him. After all, he was on the inside, looking out.
Wow.
Very nice, Stefano.
Yeah, taking the
I commented on that one and said it was like when you just start getting into a really good movie and then someone changes the channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that to me was just like, I felt like it had sort of built up to that sort of drawing in, and then you're like,
You can't stop now.
but just like the contrast, because it's quite sort of somber towards the end, but there's like so much in the description of the place that's about the person before you get to them, like the sort of, if I can remember, like the word generous used about the balcony. And there's things like warm light and flawless. So sort of words like that sort of dropped in that sort of lead you to like have an understanding and just things like, I don't know, the mahogany, the columns, you're thinking like, okay, well, this is someone who's, so you sort of, before you get to even hear about them, you think this is someone kind of generous and affluent, and then it sort of, I don't know, it seems to sort of get a bit darker as you get closer to them. And then, so that made me think like, well, this was a really good introduction.
Yeah, it's amazing how the description of the building, you're already, you know, making assumptions about the person who lives there and
Yeah.
who they're going to be and what are we going to find out about them. But all they've done is describe a house.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, but it just has those, I think it can't help but make those associations. Like if it had said like the narrow veranda, or that would have said something completely different. You know, that's what I took from it. So yeah, I said it's like someone's just changed channels, and she said, and you want to throw popcorn at them.
However, that's also how I feel every day when I read your story, that it stops and I'm like, where's the next episode?
All right. Yeah. It's a laugh a minute, isn't it?
That's why we're all binge watching.
Exactly.
Time for bed. Oh no, we'll just watch one more, shall we?
That's I started watching that It's a Sin, and they said that you can watch all of them if you want. And I've stopped myself. It's like, no, let's do this the old-fashioned way. You have to wait till every Friday.
I like that, because sometimes you want the suspense and you want to think about it for a while and think about what happened in the last episode and guess what's going to happen next, and then be proven completely wrong almost every time.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting though how when we listen to a story, how much we our imagination puts things into the gaps that are left there? You know, we actually don't need to know a great deal to kind of get an idea of what's going on, or at least we assume we know what's going on. There's a movie on Netflix called Arctic with Mads Mikkelsen, you know, who played Le Chiffre in the Casino Royale film, the first, you know, the guy with the tear that came down when he was playing poker. And it opens with him in the Arctic, in the tundra somewhere. And you can see what looks like a crashed aeroplane in the distance. And he's scratching in the surface, in the snow, you know, down to the rocks beneath the snow. We don't know what the hell's going on. And then the camera pulls up on, presumably from a drone, and you see SOS that he's scratching into the snow. So we kind of know it's, you know, he's obviously crashed, he's on his own, it's him against the tundra and the polar bears and so forth. So there's virtually no dialogue, you know, for the first half an hour or so, but we kind of don't need to know that much to sort of figure out what's going on.
That's brought something to mind, you talking about that, with something that I've loved about some of the stories we've seen over the weekend. Some of the stories, traditionally, you might not think of a story at all. as a story at all. We've had some that have come in that have literally been a picture, and they say a picture paints 1,000 words, and there's so much truth to that. I think Catherine posted a wonderful picture of a large stone on a weighing scale.
I saw that.
Make of it what you will.
I saw that.
And there was another one this evening, which I haven't even had a chance to fully look at myself, by Kat, which was she's a workshop facilitator, and she did the Hansel and Gretel version of workshop facilitation, and she basically had a kind of Hansel and Gretel house, and then a whole load of different ideas of how she would make that house up, what she would make it of as a facilitator. So I love the link to the work, and I also love the idea that the story was told by everyone who knows Hansel and Gretel instantly puts their own ideas as to what the story is about. Plus, she added her own elements to it, her own personality and her own twist. And I think setting scenes in movies without words, listening to a piece of music, listening to a piece of classical music, the stories are all there. If you listen to, I've lost his name. Who do we listen to pretty much every day?
Ludovico Einaudi.
Thank you, Ludovico Einaudi. The way that you follow every single note, you tell yourself your own story. I'm constantly thinking of stories as I'm listening to the music that he's playing, but they're probably different to the story that every single one of you are listening to. But I think that's what's so wonderful, is that there are stories in everything.
These instances of being shown like the stone on the scales and being shown very little. We read so much into it. There was a series of photographs that were published a few years ago. You may have seen this, of an elderly couple standing in their garden on the pathway leading to their house, and the photographer took a picture of them every season as the seasons changed. So they were stood there, the house in the spring, stood there in the spring, in the summer, the autumn and the winter and so forth. There are about sort of 12, 15 photographs all layered on top of each other in a collage. And then in the last one, it was just the man. So what do we see there?
I was going to say there could be so many different reasons for that, but I wonder if almost everybody thinks the same initial impression. It's interesting.
I assume she died because they were an elderly couple.
Yeah.
I saw a tragic story there, but she might have just been in the kitchen washing up, and she said, well, I'm busy, I'm not going out today.
Yeah. What would be interesting is if say a year later there was a photo of the two of them again, if she hadn't passed away. So that most people have to say, because like I said, I think a lot of people will have that perception, and then that's the twist to the story, is that a year later there's another photo and she's back with a wedding ring off.
That's right. I wasn't talking to him that season. We fell out.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it was the winter one and she's like, no, I'm not doing that again.
Too cold. Too cold.
Too cold.
They just had central heating installed.
Yeah.
And she was just enjoying it on the inside.
Exactly, yeah.
You're on your own, mate.
Stefano, I'm going to have to go because I promised my son I'd actually watch something with him this evening. So would you excuse me? And
of course.
Can I just thank everybody? It's been lovely. I think the group that you put together is so nice, Stefano. They're such wonderful people.
Can I interrupt you just for a second? Because I would like to say it's not just me. I get the credit because I'm the face of this. Cyan does 90% of the work. I just say hello and wave at people. So I'd like to give Cyan all the credit she deserves.
I'll just deal with her from now on then, shall I?
I think so.
Yeah, straight to the boss. Yeah. No, it's a team effort, and it's been amazing seeing everybody's stories. Just in the first 3 days,
you've unleashed a beast, I think, here, both of you. So, but well done anyway. It's a great initiative, and lovely to meet you all.
Thanks.
Likewise.
Enjoy your programs tonight.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. I realised, by the way, I'm happy to hang around for quite a while longer, but I realised we did say that this was going to be half an hour to an hour. So if other people do need to leave at any point, we won't be offended. We completely understand.
I didn't see an end time. I just saw, like, when you go to the page with the link and it just said an evening of, and I thought, I don't know, it'll probably be just one of those things.
I
Because
thought
it just goes.
One of the last people there helping clear up.
That's the good thing about Zoom. You don't have to have. You don't have to put the chairs away.
I like Andrew. I miss going to those. I actually miss going to live networking.
Mm.
One thing I used to do a lot of illustrations about. And I was a bit limited just doing laptop screens.
Yeah, I can imagine that makes life a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
Well, it's more like a challenge, but yeah, I miss that, actually going and just mingling, just hanging out with people at proper networking events.
Yeah.
So, not that there's anything wrong with this. I mean, this is pretty. I'm just really glad that we can do stuff like this now.
Yeah, the good thing with this is that you can have quite the international audience as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I've just, if you don't mind me reading this, Alistair, I just saw your message and I'd like to pass it on.
Yeah.
Did you see that, Gary? Where did you where did you get your inspiration from? Where do you get your inspiration from? Where do all your stories come from?
Oh, stories.
You need inspiration for your illustrations and your cartoons.
That is, I guess there's two sides to it. One is just my own stuff that's just ongoing, and that can be anything. I'll just be like watching TV and something will just strike me as funny, or I'll be washing up and I'll get an idea and I've got into the habit of just scribbling them down, or even just doing a quick sketch if I've got time. And the more I do that, the more they come. But for client work, it's all about it. Just to put this very briefly, it's just about them and their audience. So what are they trying to say, and who to, and why? What do they want them to do?
Yeah.
And I take their ideas and just come up with as simple an image as possible to try and get across what it is they're talking about.
I think that's the glorious, and for me, when I look at cartoons, they are so simple. And the simpler they are, the cleverer they are. I also like to be made pause for a second to make sure I get it, but as opposed to it being too obvious.
I see that as an aspiration for the right direction, and one that I never actually achieve. I'm always like, let's try, I'll head the right way, but at the end, there's always something like, I wasn't quite there. I think that's actually a good thing. It keeps you on your toes.
It does. I think though as well, that's probably something that you have when everybody else sees your illustrations. I don't think they feel the same. I know that from at least my personal opinion. When I see your illustrations, I'm always in awe of them. So yeah, they're brilliant.
Yeah, I think the last 10 minutes of the conversation has been about art and photographs as well as stories, and people sending you photographs. When I read, I bury myself in The Economist and a couple of national newspapers every day, and I take photographs of the photographs to poke my students to say, right, what does this make you think? Hoping that they will riposte and come back and say, right, I'm going to show you an even better photograph, Alistair, so I'm going to stick it up your collection because I want to squeeze them hard.
That is true. I think on my last day, I handed you, we were back in the days of CDs, I handed you a CD with 500 pictures of wheelchairs of various things, because we were like, he told us to go find pictures, so we found every picture we could find. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, in Switzerland every year in Lausanne, we run a class for 30 to 40-year-olds, and we go out into around the business school with wheelbarrows and baby strollers and wheelchairs, and we put a student into them, into each one, or a bag of potatoes into the baby stroller. But if you haven't used a wheelchair and gone to a disabled toilet and gone up a ramp and gone down narrow aisles in a supermarket, you really don't realize how badly designed they are. But photographs say so much. I'm just a big fan of just putting up a photograph, saying nothing. And if I can let me explain a little bit more about this book, because what happened with it was, so Gillian and I are having lunch, and she said, well, listen, would you write something? And it's got to be 62 words. If it's 63, we throw it away and start again. But not only that, she said, we're going to take you down to the Ulster Museum, just up from the university on Stranmillis Road. And we've got the 26 poets, and we're going to give each of you an artifact from the museum. And you have to take that away, meditate on it day and night, and then write your 62 words as your response to the artifact. So, and you have no choice. This is what you get. And I go, well, okay, I'm up for this. This is good for my sensory perception, and I will, So, and not only that, we're also going to partner you with a design company in Belfast. And I was partnered with David Woods from Bag of Bees. And since 2013, we've just been great friends. We talk about all sorts of stuff. So I was taken upstairs into the hall, and there I was presented with, they're called the Drum Best horns. These are two bronze horns found in a peat bog in Ireland and dated at 3000 BC. So they didn't let me take them home. But I was allowed to hold them. I was allowed time alone with them to go, What am I getting? I'm getting trumpets. And then I went away. Also, David Woods was with me, and he was allowed to look at them, and he had to come up with some art. Now, I can show you his art. It's a really bad picture. It might be online. And if you were really, anyway, I read it. I then had to go into some recording studio and read it online, and it probably went up for about 3 weeks, and it's been deleted. But I thought that was really, it was such a, it wasn't Alistair writes something, it was Alistair writes something about these two horns. And so I thought about it. And I thought about 3,000 years ago, what do horns do? What do they use them for? You don't take them to a rugby match and go when your team's doing well. You use them to communicate. And maybe, one toot means breakfast is served, and 2 toots means we're closing the city gates, and 100 toots means the king's had a baby son with blonde hair. But, so I'm going to read this to you.
Please.
So let's see how this goes. Hang on, I need a bit of light. I've turned my office into a sort of recording studio.
Nice.
Bear with me here. Breaking news. Born to deliver sound, all tones and moods, joy, sorrow, warning and news. News of birth, death, war, harvest, rain, hope, despair. Trumpeting my master's bidding. Born on the wind, I share my news with all who listen. I command you, listen and respond, reverberating with joy. Sonorously and gloomily I weep for the fallen. Listen to me, simply listen. So that's what I got from the horns.
Wow.
Wow.
I mean, it's such a challenge because, bronze horns aren't, my thing particularly. But
they're definitely ours. We're big fans.
For a week or two, I was. And to you guys in Eindhoven, I spent a wet spring Sunday afternoon in The Hague.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the Market Museum, perhaps it's called. I can't remember.
Yes.
Where the girl,
It's a market museum.
Yeah.
Never been.
where the girl with the pearl earring hangs on the wall.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those dreadful days. There was nobody. They were all sitting at home by the fire. So I strolled in, and in an oak paneled room, there is the painting of the girl with the pearl earring, and I was there. Nobody else. There weren't busloads of Germans and Japanese and everybody else. There was just the two of us. And there I was, communing. And so art, I think, and poetry allow us to commune. Hey, anyway, so, and this is a wonderful thing to do with you guys.
Love that painting. I've seen that.
Were you as at peace? Was it just you as well, Gary, or did you have the surrounding the surrounding troops?
No, I wasn't alone. Girl with the pearl earring. I remember I was in Amsterdam when they had a Van Gogh exhibition on, because I guess it was a long time ago, and I guess it was 100 years since his death. For some reason, I remember the Potato Eaters was one that really struck me, and it's not one of his more well-known ones. It's but there's just something about that atmosphere, probably because I was miserable soul even back then. But but it was like there was, I don't know, just it seemed to have more atmosphere about it, and because I went to see all the like Rembrandts, and that, I don't know, it had a similar feel to it. Maybe it was just because I was doing it at the same time. Yeah.
Possibly.
I saw the Mona Lisa once, and that was a massive letdown. It was just surrounded by people, and it's just.
I'm not sure if I've ever heard anybody say that it's anything but a letdown, to be honest. I'm not sure if that's what it's there for. It's there to get your hopes up, to then, maybe that's the art within it.
I think it's just, I don't even think it's the real, I think it's just a bad print.
I think there's so much amazing art that you walk past on the way to it and afterwards as well, that it doesn't, I don't know.
I know, yeah.
It doesn't have that feeling. And it's so surrounded by so many people that you kind of take a look and go, okay, I've seen it. And then.
I remember sorry, go on.
Probably the first ever example of something going viral, isn't it?
yeah, probably is. I remember when we walked in and we kind of glimpsed at it, went and turned around and looked at the Last Supper. just not interested at all.
Can I tell one quick story and then I'll go? I was in the National Museum one day, National Gallery, Trafalgar Square. There's a Caravaggio, and you paid 15 quid extra to go there, so there weren't many people in, lunchtime, whatever. Walked in, sitting on a chair, and a family went past with some small girls, and one of them stopped. So I'm 30 feet away from this giant Caravaggio of a canal scene, and she looks deep into the left-hand corner and bursts out laughing and runs off to tell her mum that she's seen something. And I'm sitting going, what was that? But there's a guy with a walkie-talkie and a black jacket, and he's just bored. And if I run forward, he'll think I'm just a typical, oh, what's he after? So anyway, she disappeared. I'm just looking at the grandeur of the canal, and she comes skipping back with a girl, another little 8-year-old, and she says, look, look, look. And the other girl bursts out laughing. Then the mother comes and says, come on, girls, we've got to go. Mummy, look at this. So Mummy goes over, and she bursts out laughing. So I'm bursting to see what's happening in this picture, because I've got perspective, I've got Grand Canal, I've got gondolas, I've got all sorts of stuff. Anyway, so I sort of go, stroll forward. And in the gondola, in the bottom left hand of this giant 20-foot painting, there's a gondola with a little curtained bit in the middle with 2 yellow curtains and a lady looking out round the corner. And I thought, is that what she was laughing at? Because it's, and then I looked at the gondolier who was standing at the back with his big pole thing. And he had his waistcoat. He had an enormous tummy. His waistcoat, 2 of the buttons had been torn off, and his top shirt was open, and he was a mess. And he was just a big, overweight geezer of a gondolier, and it was very funny. In the entire picture, he was that size. But when you really went in, there was the detail, and I thought, Caravaggio, that is just fantastic. And most people would never see that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
The
the
perspective of an 8-year-old girl. They're
Oh.
probably at the right height to see it.
exactly.
That's what he meant.
And we're all going, I went to the Caravaggio, rah, 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 you know, light and all of that. But she was seeing the detail, and the detail of our stories is the thing that captivates, I think.
Yeah. And it's also the thing that tells everybody a different story when they read it.
It's we all take away something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Just
I'm going
picture.
to go, but two things. I'd love to find out, so I'd like to come again. Are you doing this every night?
We haven't decided.
Maybe not every night. Maybe Wednesday or Thursday night we'll do it again.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in where all the stories came from geographically.
That's
For
We'll
another-
take a look and find out. Yeah.
yeah.
just because I'm interested in that, because with under Zoom conditions, we could be from anywhere.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yes. that's
Where are
true.
you now, Alistair?
I'm just outside Belfast, and I'm writing a chapter for a book this week on creativity, and I've got about 30. It's a sort of semi-academic piece. It's not my usual thing, but they said, listen, we don't want you to be academic. We just want you to be yourself. So once they read the draft, that'll be the end of that. I don't think this is for us, Alistair. No, they know me well. They know what they're going to get. But it's a bit like writing that poem for the the horns. It's trumpets. It really concentrates. If you've only got a couple of pages to write down what you really want to say, whew, darn hard.
Difficult.
I think sometimes having restrictions on your creativity can make you more creative.
Does it makes you more focused?
Yeah.
I enjoyed very much meeting you all.
Okay.
Thank you for organizing it, Puck, and we'll meet again.
It's been an
Definitely.
absolute pleasure,
Thanks
and
for
we
joining.
definitely will do at least one more of these, maybe even more than one more of these.
I think it's
This
a
was,
good
this
idea.
was lovely.
Great idea. And back in Belfast, we've got all the engineering students. We've set up the potting shed, which is a conversation. And if you want to join in on that,
Brilliant.
Sounds good. We'll
Yeah,
take a
sounds
look.
good. Also, tell all of those students and anybody you know about storytelling with Puck and get them involved. Get them telling the stories before is it February the 6th?
Yeah.
Saturday anyway. before Saturday, so that we can add even more to the collection and get even more inspiration and
it's a
energy
super
from
project. It's a super project. So thanks very much.
No, thank you very much for coming, and thank you for regaling us as well.
No.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Right, I think we'll probably go in another maybe five minutes or so as well. But before we do, I just wanted to check: do any of the guys who are left? it's reducing slowly. Would any of you like to tell one of your stories that you shared with us this week?
No, thank you.
Fair enough, Louise. Your story was already shared at the beginning, to be fair.
And I missed it, so it was okay.
I'd like,
No, it was hard. It's hard enough for me to actually do this. I mean, share my story. So I actually don't want to share it now.
That's okay.
That's fair. We were very grateful that you did it, and we all loved it, by the way.
Thanks.
I'd like to say something about mine, if I can. Just
Yes.
that I really, when I saw this was happening, I really wanted to take part in it because I've been writing forever. And I had two sets of writing, and it was a very clear choice which one do I start with, because once one starts, it rolls, and it's going to carry on beyond this. And I also wanted to talk to you about writing groups and things, because I need other people, and I just wanted to do more. But there were very two types of writing. There's the one you've seen, which is very serious and as honest as possible, which is why it makes me feel sick when I press post. And then there's the other one that is actually, it's more or less about the same thing. It's sort of stories of childhood, but it's done in a more detached, deadpan kind of way that's trying to be funny. which would have been a lot safer, but was sort of like a dead end. It was just like, I thought, you know what I mean? It was like I had a choice. Do I go for being sort of like this one, which wasn't really, I just felt like you're not really being honest with this one. And but at the same time, I kind of still like it, but it's just coming at it from a different angle. It was kind of funny, friendly, deadpan, sort of like making light of things. So, but I'm glad as soon as I did the other one and saw some of the, not that you should need to be validated by other people, but
Nice.
It's nice to
Be
be.
honest.
yeah, but I felt like I've made the right choice.
I think we're all very glad that you made that choice.
Yeah, I'm glad you made the choice too.
I
Really, really great to read
Thank
this
you.
ongoing story. Yeah.
But I thought, yeah. So there's still a home for the others, I think, somewhere, but I don't know where.
Something that resonated with me. I had a conversation with somebody the other day who is taking part in Storytelling with Puck, but I'm not 100% sure she wants me to mention her name, so I'm not going to. But when we had this conversation, she was asking me all about what this event was and how. Oh, sorry, I'm going to interrupt myself because I just saw the message from Garima. Absolutely fine. Thank you.
I'll just be back. I need to check something.
Okay,
Just
no
give
worries.
me.
Do you know
Sorry.
what? As somebody who's supposed to be writing and reading for a living, I completely misread that. No worries. I'll see you in a couple of seconds. So sorry. Yes, we were having this conversation, and then she was asking all about Storytelling with Puck, and she said, I've got lots of stories which I've told people, but she said the stories that I haven't told people, they don't have a happy ending. And she said, I don't know if I should tell them because they don't have a happy ending, and I don't feel like people are going to want to see that. And my response, and I think your stories are proving this too, Gary, is that to connect with someone, to build a relationship with someone, doesn't always take that happy ending. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it's nice, and sometimes it's good to get that feeling from it. And it doesn't take a happy story necessarily. What it takes is for you to feel something. It can be almost anything, but you have to feel something. So you probably don't want to hear all of the different feelings that I had when I read your story, but there was definitely a whole mixture of them. And they were going from, shock and pain and awe and lots of different feelings all mixed into one. And I love all of your illustrations, and they've helped me to connect with you in one way, even though I'd not met you before. But then reading this helped me to connect with you on a level that I never even knew existed until I read this. So writing something and putting it out there that's very honest and very open is a really, really difficult thing to do. And you do have to be careful with it because it can cause things that you don't want it to cause as well, in terms of if you don't get the reaction you want, if that makes sense. You have to be comfortable before you put it out there. Yeah. But having said that, most of the time when people put those kind of stories out there that are true, even if they're not happy, even if they're sad, but they make you feel, or they make you feel angry, or whatever it is they make you feel, what they also do is connect. And I think that's what you've been doing with your stories. I think they've been brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I've been gripped by every one. And similar to some of the stories I talked about earlier, I had to read them a couple of times to really understand them. And I still don't understand them. I'll have to read them again and again to fully get into them. Only you can fully ever understand them. But yeah, So
and really just about that, there's a longer term point to it, which actually is about happy ending, but it's about, like, if there are dark, difficult subjects and they're there and that's unavoidable, then the happy ending is in them and through them. It's on the other side of them. It's not something that you can just like go for a kind of more shallow happy ending somewhere else when there's all that there. look in there, it's that thing of sort of like acknowledging darkness to find light and all that sort of stuff that you see on motivational quotes all the time. But
yeah,
this is
but within themselves, those motivational quotes often are
Yeah.
kind of boring and meaningless. But when you actually go into the depth of what they're trying to say,
yeah,
that's where what you're doing comes into its own. And I agree.
yeah,
With the general point that you're making now, I think is a really key one, that sometimes the happy ending is just the fact that you're through it and you've managed to put it down on paper.
and there's someone I know who is a family therapist and does a lot of work with people who have come from really troubled backgrounds or are still in it. And one of her clients said to her, "You helped me find the treasure in it." And that, to me, it's just every now and then I hear little things like that that shows me like, keep doing what you're doing. Because if it was just wallowing in crap, there's no point in that. Just bring everyone down, you know. But if it's for a purpose that's about healing and light and all that good stuff, then that's why I'm doing it. So, but thank you, I appreciate that.
You really can say no to this, by the way. There is no pressure whatsoever. How do you feel about reading the first section of it?
Cool.
If
Can I
that's
read-
too much, don't worry.
funny
There is no
ones?
pressure at all. We've just talked about it so much now.
Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay, I'll have to get it off my screen though, so I'll be reading off the screen without
No, that's
actually.
absolutely fine. That's no
Right.
problem at all.
Okay. I thought you said you were going in 5 minutes.
Yeah, but then this opportunity came along, which we can't let go.
Right. Okay, I'm just going to read it. Right, it's the idea of the whole thing is called The Madman in the Cellar, and starts with a quote by someone called Terry Real, and it says, "Family pathology rolls from generation to generation like a fire in the woods, taking down everything in its path until one person in one generation has the courage to turn and face the flames. That person brings peace to his ancestors and spares the children that follow." A Saturday evening in early August 1979, we were eating our dinner in the lounge from trays on our laps, sausages and mash with peas fresh from the garden. Mum and Dad sit on the sofa. My sister and I are positioned on mismatched armchairs either side of the sofa. My left arm is in a sling, having cracked a bone on the last day of term. We were playing a ball game on the grass behind our classroom hut. As I reached into the air for the ball, I was body tackled from behind by Stephen Gordon, a strange whispering boy with a perpetual unsettling smile and a hangdog face mottled with freckles. The taciturn young Gordon dragged me sharply to the ground and I landed on my elbow. In those days of limited communication and with no transport, somehow Mum managed to get me to Torbay Hospital. After waiting for hours to be seen, I was sent for an x-ray. Stephen had cracked my humerus. They gave me a sling and we went home. That summer, I fell in love with music. On the beach, as the other village kids swam and splashed in the sea, I sat on the shingle with a transistor radio. The songs I heard then still raised the hairs on the back of my neck. I Can't Stand Losing You by The Police, My Sharona by The Knack, I Don't Like Mondays by the Boomtown Rats, and the first single I bought, Pop Music by M. Blondie, Two-Tone, New Wave, popular culture's response to the aftermath of punk. Sid Vicious, who I've not yet heard of, died in February. Later this year, The Clash will release the album London Calling, perhaps the last true punk record. I've never heard of Ian Curtis. I don't know that Factory Records in Manchester has recently released Joy Division's first album, Unknown Pleasures. I don't know The Cure. I don't know that The Fall have just released their third single and are about to record their second album. The 15-year-old Johnny Marr has yet to knock on Morrissey's door. I discovered this new world in about 4 years when I venture beyond the safety of the top 40 and start listening to John Peel. This journey begins with 1983's Festive 50, topped by New Order's Blue Monday. I once took that radio apart. The housing was made of plywood. As I sat on that beach, alone but for the songs crackling and whining from my wooden treasure box, The monsters that would rip my life to irreparable shreds lay dormant in the shadowed corners of my soul. Nobody knew they were there. They waited patiently for the coming turbulent storms of adolescence when their destructive work could begin. It will take me a long time, well into my early 50s, to realize I never had to do any of what followed, to understand that at any time, in any of the innumerable moments that make up the lost years of my late teens and early adulthood, I could have just stopped. To the people I called friends or relationships, I could simply have said, okay, I'm going. I could have just walked away with no guilt, no regret, and without even a backward glance, and started again from scratch. But I didn't. It never occurred to me. I was lost, gone. I didn't know I could just do that. I didn't know I had a choice, which is the same as having no choice. Got my mouth dry.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Just takes us there.
I just wanted that moment of silence as well. It's gather our thoughts a little on that. It's
I'm just fascinated by awkward silences. I love them. It's like they're just so full of stuff. And it's like whenever there's just a big load of nothing but a load of unsaid stuff, it's just want to get in and write about it and find out what it is. Which doesn't make me very popular, to be honest.
But I think it's always interesting, like the difference between, you know, uncomfortable silence and, you know, happy silence.
Oh yeah.
Or how do we know that there's a difference? Because it's just
You
silence,
feel it.
but we
I don't
can
know why,
feel the
Feel
tension.
the energy.
What's sometimes interesting though is, so for example, that silence that we just had then, I was very comfortable in because I was personally just absorbing the story, and I felt like everybody else in the room was too. But because I agree with you, I think there's an interest in the psychology behind it, because as I'm feeling very comfortable in that silence, the question is, are other people also feeling comfortable? Is one person's comfortable silence somebody else's uncomfortable silence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is all to do with them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But back to your story, and thank you for that introduction. When we saw that on Saturday, I believe it was, we were both enthralled by it, and we're desperate for the next episode. Yes, and we've now had 2 more, which for anybody who's watching this, go look at Gary's LinkedIn profile and go and find his stories, and find part 2 and part 3, because they're exceptional, and they deserve to be read. So please do. Now, Garima, we haven't really spoken too much this evening, so I thought it would be nice to bring you into the conversation a little bit, if you before we say our goodbyes, if you do have a couple of seconds.
Sorry?
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to bring you into the conversation a little bit before we say our goodbyes, if you do have a couple of seconds, because we haven't really had a chance to get your thoughts and your feelings on, you know, the week.
Yeah, I was busy listening to so many stories and interesting, you know, so it was really very nice to hear everybody telling about his own story, their own point of view. So many things to listen to. So I was like, you know, I just got carried away by all that. That was why I was quiet, you know.
Well, no, I'm pleased that you were enjoying listening and absorbing it all. I know we were in those moments too. I have to say we've read all of your stories and got a peek into your life with the diary of a creative writer. They're brilliant. I really enjoyed the story that you put out today. I think it was today.
About the teacher.
About the teacher, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Again, there's no pressure for this, but if you feel like one last story before we go, then you are very welcome to read that, because we all enjoyed it very much. But there's no pressure. Again, if you don't feel comfortable reading aloud, that's
No, I am okay.
Okay.
There's nothing to be uncomfortable about it. We are sharing our stories, and like as I don't know how many of you have read it, but I was here in Nigeria, and I was brought up here, and among all the teachers that I have had, the person whom I've mentioned, his name is Mr. David. He's a Ghanaian, but he came to Nigeria. He was a lecturer in the university, and then later he went into private teaching. And Ghanaians, they are very good in English and French. I think those are their two national languages. So I have seen that most of the time the teachers, whether they are teaching in the school or privately, they only teach what is in the textbook, and that's it. And I think that is the main problem in the education system. It doesn't matter where in the world you are.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers, the parents, and everybody, they will expect the children just to like cram what is in the textbook and get good grades, and that's it, And but Mr. David, he was not at all like that. He used to encourage his students to, think outside the box, like watching TV programs, writing about what you have seen. Not only on the TV, when you go outside, just like we are sharing our stories, to integrate what you have seen on TV, what you have experienced in your life, into writing down something for others to see that, yes, you are doing something different. Now, since he's an English teacher, when I was in the school, our English teachers, they used to tell us, okay, maybe write a letter to a friend or to some family relative or to somebody, there will be some particular person they will stick to, or write an essay maybe about your hobby or your favorite teacher or your best friend. What I'm trying to say is that they don't go outside all that. It has become like a trend. But Mr. David was not at all like that. As I'm sure those of you who have read the story, you have read about a particular lesson in which he asked us that what is free in the world. Now, because as students, we were like conditioned to that particular mentality. So we were thinking in terms of, okay, what we have taught, what we have learned in the school. And we started answering that, oh, air is free, water is free, food is free, like that. But he was like, what about love? What about friendship, kindness, all those like human emotions, nature, beauty, So all of us, because we were children, we just didn't know what to say. So that is like an example. And then last year, I just thought of meeting him, because my father also wanted, since he's an English teacher, my father encouraged me to go and meet him and tell him, let him know about what I am doing. So we were able to find his private school, and I went and met him. Even though it took some time because of the pandemic and the schools were closed, and it took time for me to get in contact with him. But once I went there and met him, and he was so happy because it had been years, decades even since I last saw him. I was not even sure that whether he's even in Nigeria or maybe he has gone back to his country. But I was lucky that he's around. And he was very happy. I showed him my website, and he was, as a teacher, it's just like as a parent, you will be proud of your child if your child is able to achieve something. So a teacher is also like your parent. So he was very happy, and we had a great time together, revisiting old times. And so that's just it. I think among all the teachers whom I've had, he's the only one I can remember, because it is natural that somebody who has a unique impact in your life, that is the person whom you will remember. And the picture that I put in my post, that's the picture we took last year when I met him. So that also helps, in remembering. When you have the picture of the person, you will be like, yes, even when you have your own children, grandchildren, you can tell them that, yes, look, this was the teacher from whom I learned something different, so.
Teacher that inspired you, and yeah.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. I love the link to Cyan's story earlier as well, in a similar vein to Professor Fee, who was obviously on the call, and I think we all saw why he was such an inspiration. Brilliant orator, and really gets his point across well. And I can imagine for you that's a similar idea with Mr. David, and it speaks highly, I think, of what we're all trying to portray with this week, which is the power of that connection, the power of those stories, the fact that Cyan's lectures, the ones that she remembers, are the ones from Professor Fee with the stories that were told, and the ones that you remember are the ones where somebody captured a moment and asked you the pressing questions, and then challenged your answer, and then explained why, in a way that captivated you. I think
I think it's all about, that's the point, it's all about challenging the other person, whether the other person is your student or friend, or it can be in any capacity, And like, as I mentioned, that even I was a teacher for like at least 5 years.
Wow.
And that is what I have seen in the schools, it's just the same trend that is still going on. Even as a teacher, even if you try to do something different, the management, they don't really appreciate all these things, they will be like pressurizing you that just, we are giving you the materials, the textbook and everything, and just do it. They are more interested in, actually the education system has become a business. They are more interested in making money, and the only way they can make money is to get as many students as possible into their school, and that's the only thing they're interested in. So no, I mean, that's the reality. So when I saw the way the system is, I was actually not really comfortable, but I am really feel very lucky that I was able to meet Mr. David again. And then, we talked about the times that he used to teach us. And it was really a really very fortunate experience that I had, so. So, I mean, just like, as I said, somebody who can challenge you has more impact on you than someone who just does the same thing over and over again, because after some time it becomes boring, it becomes normal. But somebody who does something that makes you to think, I think that is what makes you to remember that, yes, this person challenged me to do something unique.
Yeah, I think that's the power of a great teacher or a great anyone in your life can, just by challenging you to think a little bit differently, can have a really big impact. And I think you see that in a lot of the stories that people are telling this week, that it's something that they're telling stories about something that maybe at the time seemed a pretty insignificant moment, but when they look back, they can see how that's sort of shaped their way of thinking and shaped their life.
On that note, I think we're probably going to head off and get 40 winks, and start again tomorrow, with all of the curated of the stories. This has massively exceeded any expectations, which are already quite high, of what I thought the night was going to be. So, and that's all because of you guys. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for all of the stories that you brought to us over the weekend, and this is going out to the wider audience, not just the people on this Zoom call. Thank all of you for all of your stories as well, and even for the people who aren't telling stories but are commenting and reacting to them, to give people encouragement, to get them to tell their stories. You might not think it means much, but I guarantee you, as somebody who writes and puts my stuff out there every day, that reaction, that comment, it is something that keeps me going, and I know I'm not alone when I say that. So thank you, everybody. We will do this again.
Thank you.
Maybe once more, maybe twice more, not sure yet. but we definitely will do it again, and we hope that you can join. You can all join.
Well, thanks a lot, both of you, just for doing this and for your time this evening. It's been really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you too.
Well, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you later in the week.